Hello and welcome to another episode of Unlimited Power TCG, and in this video we're going to be looking at the aspect of Secrets of Power that is potentially the most game-changing, plot cards, how they're going to work, how you can make use of them, and how exactly they are going to completely shake the existing metagame up from top to bottom, why it's the most important aspect of Secrets of Power. The new expansion Set 6 is out in about a week or so's time as of from time of filming of this video. Yay! As with a lot of these videos, this has largely come about from me going, oh, I've seen a bunch of videos from people about which are the most powerful new cards for the set, and a lot of them are plot cards, which is curious and interesting. So what's this mechanic all about? It's a little bit like Smuggle if you're familiar with it, in that it allows you to play from the resource row of your deck, which gives you a lot more card advantage because you don't necessarily need to be playing from your hand. But more, we'll get into the details in a moment. This is what we're going to be covering in this video. It looks like a lot. It's not quite as big as it looks on there, especially since the last 8 points are really just looking at the plot cards that are going to be available to you based on what aspect combination you're going to be playing with your deck. But we'll start off by looking at what is a plot card. And plot is ultimately a keyword that you will see on certain cards. It can be a unit, it can be an event, it could be an upgrade, doesn't really matter. But it lets you... This is the simplified version of the text that you'll find on any normal card. This is not the full version of the text. When you deploy your leader, when you flip them and bring them out, you may play the plot card from your resources. You have to pay its cost, and then you replace the plot card that you spent from your resources with the top card of your deck, so you're not losing out or destroying any resources in doing so. Let's go into a little bit more detail on that. This is what a plot actually means in full exhaustive detail from the comprehensive rules document that's been updated for Secrets of Power. Plot is a keyword that resolves like the triggered ability when you deploy a leader. This is a really weird wording that I've spotted before, because it doesn't have the text when you deploy a leader. It is a keyword that resolves like the ability and uses that text, which is really strange. You play the card from your resource zone by playing its cost, replacing with the top card of your deck. This ability is active when the card is a resource, because normally cards that are down as resources do not have active abilities and their text is completely blanked, but plot is a exception to that rule. You may play any number of plot cards from your resource zone when you deploy a leader. After you deploy the leader, you show your opponent each card with plot that you plan to play. You flip them and show them all off right there. You announce them, you declare them, then you play them one at a time in any order that you choose. And any abilities triggered by playing a card with plot must be resolved before playing the next card with plot, because, because that's the way the rules said that they've done so. As the card enters play, the card using plot is replaced in the resource zone by the top card of the player's deck. The two cards are considered to enter play simultaneously, which is fine. The new resource enters play exhausted, which is as it does because resources always enter exhausted unless stated otherwise. You can pay the cost of the plot card using the plot card that you're about to play, because you'll exhaust it and then play it forth, and then it'll be replaced by a card on top of your resource row, top of your deck into your resource row, that will come in exhausted. A card with plot must already be in the resource zone when a leader is deployed in order for its ability to be able to trigger, which is fine. But what this ultimately means is that any cards that you put down into your resource row cannot then be used as plot cards in that same deployment. So it has to already be a plot at the moment you deploy the card, and it can't be newly placed in there as part of the replacing cards, which is fine. Just be aware that that's a fact. This has several implications. Implications are that this increases the size of your hand in the same way that Smuggle did. You'll be able to play cards from your resource row that don't have to be in your hand at the same time, which means that cards that pillage your hand or hand discard effects don't necessarily won't affect plot cards that are in your resource row, which is great because you'll always have something to play when your leader deploys, at least in theory. There are also cards that work and gain power based on the number of cards you have in your hand. In particular, a brand new event in Secrets of Power, which you're going to need to be aware of because it could potentially hit really, really hard. Aggressive negotiations. Let's say you've got 4 or 5 cards in your hand. You'll get +4 or 5 for 3, which is a huge finisher. At least potentially a huge finisher. It could even be worse because let's say you play your resource down to deploy your leader, you play your plot cards out of your resource row, which means you're not spending any cards from your hand that turn necessarily, so you could save all the cards that you've got in there, and the following turn you don't play anything into your resource row, and then you've got 2 extra cards in your hand ready to fuel aggressive negotiations should you play it for a next powerful burst the turn after you deploy, or whatever other combination you want to use this card with. But it's definitely one worth being aware of, because it could come out of nowhere and surprise you. You may have to be a little bit more on the ball with asking your opponent how many cards they've got in their hand, which gives away the fact you're paying attention, but this is kind of up to you what you want to do there. So yeah, that's the thing, that's the details, the letter of the law as to what a plot is and how a plot works. So let's move on to the next stage. The cost of plotting. Plotting is not free. Plotting comes out of the power budget of a card, and what that means is that whenever a Fantasy Flight Games creates a card, they use the power budget based on the resources that you pay for the card to give it stats, to give it power, to give it defense, to give it an ability, all these sorts of things. So if we look at a basic plot card here that costs 2, it is an upgrade that gives 0 attack and +3 defense, and I picked this because there's a very definite analogue of it that is not a plot and is otherwise in all ways identical. It is an upgrade, which is fine. The analogue to it is Resilient, a card from set 1 that has been reprinted as well, that gives you +0 attack, +3 defense, but only costs 1. So you have a choice here, and the choice is, do you play it as an upgrade for 1, but with no flexibility to play it as a plot card from your resource row, or do you pay 2 for it as a plot from your resource row, not from your hand, not subject to hand destruction effects, but also having the flexibility and ability to play it from your hand for 2, which is 1 more than a similar effect would do, but you're paying for the flexibility in there. And it's not necessarily an easy choice. It's not necessarily an auto choice, an auto decision. You might want to make the most of the resources that you've got, and the fact that it's a hard decision is a point in the card design that I like, because if it was an auto take, that is not card design that I'm in favour of. It's got to be a decision. You've got to choose, or you should have to choose what you're using and what you're playing and what you're building in your deck based on the situation and circumstances that you want to make at the time. If there's no decision, then why are we even bothering with the whole deck building aspect of the game, which is a pretty important core part of the game. So yeah, I like that it is, in most cases at least, a hard choice. There are some plot cards which are not a hard choice, which we'll get to. How many plot cards are there? So this obviously only covers Secrets of Power because it's the first set to introduce the new mechanic. There might be new plot cards in future sets, but for now this is accurate. There are 29 plot cards in the set, broken down as you can see here on the slide that you're watching. It's interesting to me that the most plentiful pool of plot cards that you could imagine at the moment is Villain Command, because you get 3 Villain Command cards and 3 Command cards, as well as the Villain Neutral card, so that'll be 7 straight away. No other aspect combination has as many plot cards available to it from there. And then you splash in Aggression, you have you've got your 3 plus your 1 is 4, plus your 3 is 7, plus your extra 3 for Aggression is 10. So 10 plot cards access to you through Villain Command Aggression, just from a simple having the most access to the most plot cards. They may not be the best ones, they may not be the ones that you want, but they're the ones with the most plentiful choice of plots available to you. I find it academically interesting that this is how Fantasy Flight have chosen to spread them out, which is, I mean, it's a thing. It doesn't really signify anything that I can make any particular note of. Maybe villains are more likely to do plotty type things than heroes, which is philosophically fine and all, but yeah, there we go. I thought there'd be more plots in Cunning philosophically, but well, it is what it is. Anyway, right, so moving on again. Game-changing plots. These are plot cards that, one way or another, literally change the game the moment that they're played and demand that the opponent completely reworks, revises, revisits, and amends their game plan from henceforth because they have such an impact on the board state. This is obviously subjective, but it has also been taken from a lot of other opinions and content creators as well. If you disagree with any of these, if you think there are others that should be in this category, then do please say so in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. The first one is It's been all over the internet. It's crazy. It's nuts. Sinterkaz allows you to, assuming that your leader deploys on 6 or later, you deploy your leader, and in the same action you reveal Sinterkaz, play it, you get a 5/5 on the ground, and you attack with your leader right then and there. So for one action, you get 2 units on the board, and you get to attack with one of them. And that could be a big unit because of your leader. But wait, if you haven't figured it out or you haven't seen it already, it gets worse, or better, again, depending on your point of view. Because your leader could be a pilot that deploys onto a vehicle, which is essentially an upgrade, and then you attack with that upgraded unit for a potentially enormous amount of damage. One of the big leaders that this could be applying to could be the Vader pilot or the Luke pilot, hitting for 8 or 9 damage very, very easily on the vehicle they've been deployed onto, probably a spacecraft, but not necessarily. And then you claim initiative and go ready to do the same thing again next turn. You've got a big unit on the board that your opponent might have a hard time dealing with. They might not, they might have Rivals Fall or something else that could potentially deal with it, which is fine, but you're putting them potentially in check from such a huge hit in one single activation, which is nuts. This could be one of the most meta-defining game cards of the set, and potentially for the Secrets of Power set and metagame entirely, which could be fun. There's also a nice little prestige card alternate art variant of it in the Wanted poster. I'm going to be looking forward to getting 3 of those with the holographic foil effects on them, because I'm told it looks very, very good. I'm looking forward to it, and because I want to have 3 of these cards, because it's insane. Yeah. And I play Luke 4 Pilot, which will be fun. And it's an uncommon as well. Yeah, wow. A potential answer to that, but also a potential game changer in its own right, is Galen Urso, Heroic Vigilance card that costs 4. Its stats are underpowered for a 4 cost, but again, you're paying the plot tax in there. So there's a bunch of 3/5s that you pay 4 for. So if we look at that as the budget for the power, then that's fine. But that means that its ability all comes out of the power budget of the unique tag, which is interesting. When played, name a card while this unit is in play. Each non-leader card an opponent owns with that name, including those not in play, loses all abilities and can't gain abilities. Galen Urso neuters and nukes Sinterkaz. While Galen Urso is on the field, the Galen Urso player could name Sinterkaz, and Sinterkaz could not be played, which is great. You could also it's name any non-leader card. You could name a base. You could name ECL if your opponent's running Energy Conversion Lab, and then that could no longer be able to be used. You could name Tarkin Town if they haven't used it by then. You could use any base. Naming something like Data Vault would be a bit pointless because the restriction is only effective for deck building. But you know, it's versatile. It's game changing. If you name the right card and play this, then your opponent could have to rethink their strategy for the rest of the game going forward, and you could neuter them with that single card play, which is fine. And if you want to be using it to neuter Sinterkaz, as earlier mentioned, then you could be playing it alongside Regional Governor, which could do exactly the same thing. You could have both of them. So while Sinterkaz is powerful, she's not going to be unbeatable. There are answers for her out there in the game. Sentinels could also be an answer for it as well. The third game-changing card that I've identified from this is Trade Route Taxation, or game-changing plot card. Because again, once it's been played, it could absolutely mess with your opponent's game plan for the rest of that turn, assuming that you can fulfill its criteria of controlling more units than your opponent. They can't play events for this phase. If you need to make sure that your lead supply survives this turn, or you're expecting your opponents to maybe play Overwhelming Barrage or any of the other interesting things that they could use to mess with your leader deploy turn, Trade Route Taxation could safeguard you and make the rest of your leader deploy turn run as you want it to, which can be invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. The rest of the plot cards aren't quite as game-changingly impactful when played as those 3, at least to my personal opinion. Again, if you disagree or you've got other ones that you think are on the same power level, do tell me. Plot combos that hit hard. For this, I'm looking at plot cards that will boost the attack of a unit, whether it's your leader, probably your leader, or any other unit at the time. There are 8 of them. These are the first 4, which are all green, because we established earlier that green has got a powerful and large pool of plot cards available to it. Masameda pays 4 and potentially buffs a unit by +1/+1 from the official token. The Naboo Royal Starship costs 4, but potentially gives you a leader unit raid 2, which is obviously much more of a boost than Masameda. Jar Jar Binks plays 2. And gives another friendly unit +2/+2 for the phase. It's a temporary buff, but right then and there you're paying 2 for +2 attack, which is very powerful, of course. Unveiled Might, lasts for as long as the upgrade lasts, which is great. It costs more than Jar Jar Binks, but it also buffs their defense for more, and the buff is permanent, so Unveiled Might is very tasty, of course, and we've got the lovely look of Moff Gideon in his Beskar Mandalorian armour in the artwork there. The other 4, Hondo Anaka, he pays 6, and every other friendly unit gains raid 1. He has a 6/5 body on the ground, which is okay, but the buffs he gives the rest of the units on the board isn't all that necessarily. So really you want to be playing it if you want the body. And he's an Underworld card though, so we could potentially see him in CAD Red. Sudden Ferocity is just as efficient in terms of power budget for attack bonus as Jar Jar, in that you're paying 3, you're getting 3 attack. However, it is an upgrade, so it will last longer than just the Jar Jar bonus. Sneaking Suspicion, you get +1/+1 for 2 as an upgrade. FN Trooper Corps, you're paying 5 and you get to give 1 experience token to another friendly unit, so paying 5, getting bonus of +1 is not as much as some of the others, but is still worthy of inclusion in this list. So if you're looking at the single most effective combo of paying for resources versus how much attack power bonus you get from it, it's got to be this combo right then and there. These two are the only cards that give you as much attack or more, but there's none of them give you more attack than the amount of resources you're paying for, as the resources you're paying for them. So you pay 5, get 5 extra attack on the turn you deploy your leader. You're going to want to be aware of this if you're not otherwise, because this could come out of nowhere and suddenly, oh, your leader's attacking for 5 extra attack. That's another game-changing amount of damage potentially. Right, moving on from there, let's look at the plot cards that are available to you based on the particular aspects that you might be building your deck with, so you can see what potential combos are available and how you might want to build your deck, how you might want to take advantage of these combos and see what there is. Slimore, oh excuse me. So these 5 cards will be available to you if you're playing a blue villainous deck. You'll have the Slimore unit available for 4. It's a 2/6 body, which doesn't hit hard herself, but when played, each enemy unit gets -2 attack while attacking a base, not another unit, so a base. Bit niche in its appeal perhaps, but is a thing. Cad Bane, however, is pretty tasty, especially as noted for when played alongside Kira, leader from Shadows of the Galaxy, because you'll flip her, she'll do a load of damage, and then you could play the plot card for Cad Bane and defeat a unit that Kira has reduced to 2 or less remaining hit points and leave you with a 4/5 on board for the cost of 5 is potentially pretty powerful. Dogmatic Shock Squad, 4/6 Sentinel for 6 isn't amazing. It could be useful in the right place at the right time. Let's say you've put you're paying the plot bonus in there, and that's paid for, so it could be a 5/7 Sentinel for 6 if you weren't paying for the plot, but you are, so it's a decent amount of health. It's a ground Sentinel. If that's what you need at the time when your leader flips, then it's obviously worth building into your deck because it has potential to be useful. Armour of Fortune we looked at earlier. If you want your leader to hang around a lot longer, then why not pay 2 and buff their hit points up forever, or at least until they die. And FN Trooper Corps is the always available to a villain plot card, 4/5 body that gives an experience token to another friendly unit, which is likely to be your leader at the time, I'd thought, because leaders are hard to remove. Yeah, it's not bad, it's not brilliant, it's not bad. So yeah, there's your pools. There's no immediate synergies obvious and among between these particular cards and themselves. I haven't looked through every single potential combo for every card in every aspect, because that's a little bit too much for the scope of one video, or my brain, to be honest with you, so we're just going to go through the individual aspects. The next one is the most populous combo, Chancellor Palpatine is pretty good. You're paying 3, you're getting 3 bodies, assuming that you control a leader unit, which you probably will do because you're playing as a plot card and you're flipping your leader at the same time. You'll get Chancellor Palpatine's a 2/2, you'll get 2 spy tokens, which are 0/2 raid, and the spy tokens get Sentinel for the phase. So for a cost of 3, you're getting potentially 6 attack on the board, which is not the worst thing in the world. Masamaeda will give experience tokens to other official units, which is worth considering, assuming that your leader is an official or you're playing an official heavy deck, otherwise why are you bothering? First Light, not sure about this one, because immediately you're either playing it for 7 on curve as a not plot card, at which point there are better cards to be playing, or you're playing it as a plot and means your leader deploys on 7 or later. You're then getting a 5/7 in space, which isn't bad, but it's ambush, and the amount of decks that want to ambush into something in space are not as plentiful as ground decks, so it is a potentially anti-space deck card rather than a general inclusion. And when the unit attacks and defeats a unit, you may draw a card. You want to attack and defeat a unit, so assuming you can ambush into something in space and kill it that turn, you draw a card, at which point 7's not bad. You're getting a unit off the board, you get a big body left on the board, and you've drawn a card, so yeah, okay, that's not too bad there, but niche use in needing to be fighting against space in order to make use of it in the first place. Jar Jar Binks, as we mentioned earlier, is a very powerful card. The 2/1 body is a bit weak, but the fact that 4/2 you're giving a unit +2/+2 for the phase when you play him is potentially very tasty indeed. We could make it even worse. You could have 3 copies of Jar Jar in your resource row, and you could be happy killing 2 of them, because who doesn't mind killing Jar Jars? You play the first one to give your leader +2/+2, you play the second one to kill the first one and give leader +2/+2 again, and then play the third one to kill the second one and give your leader +2/+2 again. Your leader's got +6/+6 for the phase, but you've only got 1 Jar Jar Binks on the board to show for it, which might be a win by anyone's opinion. Or not. Unveiled Might will just be a permanent buff for the unit that you play it on. Again, I'm assuming it's probably going to be a leader, but it doesn't have to be. Trade Route Taxation we mentioned earlier as being a potentially game-changing card, so that needs to be borne in mind as to how that might be played. And then we again got the FN Trooper Core we spoke about in the last slide. Obvious combos available to you here. Multiple Jar Jar Binks are good. You could mix Jar Jar Binks with a Trade Route Taxation. You don't need to play more than 1 Trade Route Taxation. There's not a lot of point doing so. In fact, I wouldn't see there's any point in doing so. Although you could also go, if you're deploying on 6, you could go Unveiled Might on either Jar Jar or Trade Route, or the multiple Jar Jars that we wanted to. If you want to go for a wider board state, then Chancellor Palpatine will certainly give you that. Masamaeda is niche, and First Light is niche, and FN Trooper Core I'm not too sure as being particularly good, but that will see staple in sealed play, especially now sealeds now appear in planetary qualifiers, sectors and regionals, and will be in the Galactics, so yeah. Moving on. Right, looking at the villain aggression pool of plots that you have available to you, we've got Sinterkaz, as we looked at earlier, as being potentially a game-changingly powerful card. I would imagine that most decks that could play Sinterkaz probably will. They're likely to be leaders that deploy on 6 or higher, not ones that deploy lower, because you're not going to get to play it as a plot. But you could play it on 6, and you don't have to play it as a plot, but then you'll lose the action cheating aspect of playing it as a plot the moment you deploy your leader, which is part of what gives her impact. That's what I'm looking for. Hondo and Arca I'm not massively impressed by, as I might have mentioned earlier when we were looking at him, for the ability that he gives for every other friendly unit gains raid 1. Go wide builds have still been tricky to see use, and those that do tend to have larger buffs on the large amount of units they have, like Unity of Purpose. So I'm not sure we'll see too much use with Hondo. Sudden Ferocity we looked at as being an exceptionally powerful and efficient attack pump for the deploy of your leader, or whatever you want to play at that point. Topple the Summit, again, doesn't look too much initially. You're paying 5 to deal with 3 damage to each damaged unit, but if you do that with something like the aforementioned Kira, that could damage every single unit on the board, and then you play Topple the Summit, and murder them all, including your own friendly ones, except the ones that are, you know, shielded perhaps, or have got more than 3 health remaining. But yeah, there is potential for that to be a board wipe, a nasty one, depending on how it's made use of at the time. Worth being aware of. The last villain aspects that we haven't looked at yet are the cunning villain ones. We've got Garindon, which is kind of like a mini Bazine in a way. If you manage to get to have a look at your opponent's hand before you play Garindon, then obviously you get to make the most impact and use out of playing it as such. Maybe you could play multiple Garindons and look at the card, name a card, look at your opponent's hand, discard a card, or not, if you haven't guessed correctly, then play another Garindon, then play another Garindon, and suddenly you've potentially discarded 2 cards from their hand, or more if they've got multiple cards with the same name, and you have got 1 Garindon to show for it, which is a 1/3, which isn't amazing, but the hand destruction and disruption could be very tasty. Lurking Snub Fighter. When played, you may exhaust a unit. Let's say you deploying on 6, you play 2 of these. Your leader attacks, you've exhausted 2 units. That's pretty tasty. That could be very useful. It doesn't really need to combo with anything particularly, and is generally quite good. Fully armed and operational as a plot. I don't see many situations where that's going to get played as a plot and made use of, because your opponent will have to have attacked your base with the previous action, and then you deploy your leader, and then you play fully armed and operational, and then you pay however many resources you've got to play a unit and ambush it. There's a lot of conditions attached to that, so it could be useful. Alternatively, you could play it from your hand normally without it being a plot to ambush a unit in from nowhere, which is great, and is an ability that's only really been used in timely intervention with command aspect before this. So a bit of versatility there means fully armed and operational could see some use in some decks. Sneaking Suspicion upgrade we've previously discussed to give +1/+1 for 2, which is useful. The Wrong Ride has potentially devastating uses, because if you have the first action on your leader flip turn and you play this once or even twice, you could devastate your opponent's turn. Admittedly, you'd be using 3 or 6 of your own resources to fuel it, but you know that you're going to do that, and your opponent doesn't know that you're about to spend 2 or 4 of their own resources and disrupt what their entire plan was for that turn. So the Wrong Ride has potential massive value for disrupting what your opponent is going to do for that turn. It might not always be the case, because you might not go first that one, and they might have already used their resources. So that's why I didn't include it in the game-changing cards summary that I did earlier. But the Wrong Ride, I really like the Obi-Wan TV series. I know a lot of people didn't, or a lot of people didn't think it was amazing, but I enjoyed it. Especially little Leia in there as well. She was good. And then FN Trooper Corps, once again, we've already discussed what that one is. Moving on from the villain plot cards, we go to the hero ones that you have access to. Galen Erso, we've discussed in the Game Changers. 1 in a million is going to be very difficult to make use of, because it's 1 in a million, as the card text says. But if you can, it can kill anything. And it can kill anything for 1, which is nuts. Great. Sure. You're not going to be able to rely on it being used, but maybe you put 1 in your deck, just on the off chance. And who knows, maybe one day there will be a Death Star card, and it'll be like a 20/20 or something stupid, and if you get to 20 resources, you'll be able to kill it, which seems unlikely. Anyway, I don't know why I went down that little road. So typically, I have finished filming my video, and a wonderful combo, or at least usable combo, has occurred to me, so I'm re-recording a little bit to insert this into the video. Halfway, 2/3 of the way through? Anyway, let's get to the point of it. 1 in a million could be very, very useful if you could guarantee that a particular unit is going to be on a particular stat line on a particular resource cost curve. So with this, you want to have 5 resources, and you want your an opponent's unit to be a 5/5. So you can guarantee that through Size Matters Not, and you can then kill it with 1 in a million. So that could be 4 resources for killing any unit, literally any unit, or if you've got a force unit in play, 3 resources for kill literally any unit. Take you a couple of actions to do so, because you've got to play the Size Matters Not, and then hopefully that unit doesn't lose any hit points or anything along those lines, which is a potential fly in the ointment, but still, 3 resources, couple of actions for killing any unit does have play. So, yeah, there we go. On with the show. Actually, no, maybe not quite on with the show yet, because I've just realised that it is number of ready resources you control, so you would need to have a minimum of 6 resources, one of which you play 1 in a million, then you have 5 ready resources left, which would kill the 5/5, which would mean that you'd have had to have played Size Matters Not in a previous turn and rely on the unit that you're trying to kill not getting killed. So, usable, sure. A staple in tournament play, almost certainly not. I mean, you need to be playing a double blue hero deck in order to be using it, and then you want to kill something on your 6 flip turn, which Ray would be. But why would you want to invest so many resources and actions into killing something that the opponent has already played? Maybe unless they're a ramp deck. I don't know. Either way. Anyway, there we go. Moving on. Vigil looks interesting. 7 cost is a bit of a late game ship there. 5/9 stats aren't too bad. What would that be? 6/8, 7/7. So 7/7 for 7, or thereabouts. With the plot keyword, and it prevents damage to the rest of your other board states. If you're in a go wide board state and you want to make sure the rest of your units live longer, then Vigil is the thing. Looks like slightly modified medical frigate kind of ship. Resistance would mean it's sequel trilogy rather than prequel trilogy. Damage would be dealt to the ship, prevent 1. If damage would be dealt to this unit, it deals more damage instead, so it's kind of like a bodyguard. Maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. I think that's probably going to be more of a post-rotation card, because if you've got the option of playing a 7 cost Heroic Vigilance card, you're probably playing Luke Skywalker from set 1. Yeah. Armour of Fortune we discussed as being solidly useful. Again, no obvious synergies with the rest of the other cards. Remote Escort Tanks is the first time we've seen this one. It is the heroic plot card that all heroic cards have access to. I expect once again this is likely to be more of a sealed environment card than otherwise, because when played, give a unit Sentinel for this phase is going to be versatilely useful. You put a 5/5 on the board, it could be the Sentinel, something else could be the Sentinel, doesn't really matter, and you play it as a plot, so suddenly Sentinel. But it's not just it being Sentinel, it could be something else. For 6, not the best statted body on the world, but the when played is useful with immediate impact the moment you play it. Not necessarily game changing, but definitely useful to have, especially as a common card. Command Heroism, the Boo Royal Starship we saw earlier when looking at the attack pumps. It's okay. Friendly leader units gain raid 2 and overwhelm. For 4, yeah, sure. For 2/5 in space, yeah, okay. Not the most impactful card in the world, but not the worst thing either. Dracelian Commandos at the bottom there. 4/5 ambush for 5 with plot. Again, it's a relatively honest card, I suppose. It'll come out from nowhere to do the ambushing, but hitting for 4, living for 5 might take out a unit, which could be useful to you. Potentially you're playing this with something like Daimyo Boba, who would let it attack for 5/5, which could be nice. Maybe you're playing it with a ping effect like that Jedi whose name I've temporarily forgotten. Quinlan, yeah, who could also ping, although I'm not... Yeah, you'd ping anything lower than that because the leader would be deployed at that point because you've plotted it. Anyway, it has use, although it doesn't look like the most amazingly insane plot card in the world. Jar Jar Binks, we discussed previously, as we have unveiled Might and Trade Route Taxation. Looking at all of these, Jar Jar looks probably the most useful, versatile and powerful card out of these. And Remote Escort Tank again. We've mentioned that in the last couple of slides. Don't see that being particular. Then again, oh no, you'd be needing to pay 2 for Jar Jar and the Remote Escort Tank, or even worse, 10 for the Remote Escort Tank and Unveiled Might, because they would buff the hit points as well as give a unit Sentinel for the phase. So there are potential synergies there, but you're having to pay a lot of resources for it. So maybe not the best use case in the world for those. Heroism Aggression, a very tasty aspect combo throughout all metagames from launch through to current. Cadle Conics, you may defeat all non-unique upgrades on a unit. This would include things like experience and shields, but would not include things like the Dark Saber, which is a unique upgrade. So cheap enough to have some impact, niche enough that maybe it's not going to be your plot of choice, but could have uses in the right circumstance and if the metagame goes into a place where that would be useful. Not sure it would work well on Kylo, because I don't know how many non-unique upgrades you're looking to play on Kylo when Kylo flips. Plus, you may be playing Cadle after Kylo has flipped. You may, unfortunately, have the only opportunity to play it before, in which case it's a bit useless. Strike Force X-Wing, paying 4 for 3/2 is massively understated for a space unit, but then again, even though you're playing the plot tax of 1 resource cost, you would look at a 3/2 for 3 is, well, expect to pay that for a 2 cost space unit. When played, you may deal 2 damage to a ready unit, so the unit has to be ready, you deal a damage to it. Okay, sure. I think that's a little bit too underpowered for my taste, unfortunately. Again, we've covered Synthicaz, Sunfrosty and Topple the Summit previously, and we've covered Remote Escort Tank. Just look at these briefly. There's no immediate synergies here present. There could be one with Topple the Summit and Strike Force X-Wing, except that the pair of them would cost 9 to play together, so that's not amazing, really. This is assuming that you'd be playing both of them as plots, of course. So yeah, there we go. I mean, Synthicaz is clearly the standout in this colour combination, or any other aggression colour combinations. And finally, we have Cunning Heroism. We have Tala Durith. Each other friendly unit gets hidden, so your leader would get to be hidden, which is great. It would mean it would not get to be attacked by other units. Could be a useful piece of protection. If you're deploying a 5-cost leader, you can play it alongside the Wrong Ride. Sorry, a 6-cost leader, you play it alongside the Wrong Ride. If you're playing a 5-cost leader, you can play it alongside Sneaking Suspicion. Your leader not being able to be physically attacked on a turn that they deploy is definitely worth a look or two. Leaves a 3/3 body on the ground for 3, which is lower than you'd want, but it's a body, so sure. It's also a rebel and an imperial. I didn't notice it was an imperial and a rebel at the same time, which makes perfect sense. But the fact it's a rebel has synergies with some of the powerful cards, and is potentially very useful there. So yeah, there we go. I did this video largely because I wanted to review for myself what plots are, how they work, what potential uses they have, what potential combos they could have with decks that I like to run and decks that I could be facing. And I hope this has been of use to you. It's certainly been some use to me, getting my thoughts in order at the cards that I'm looking at, cards that I want to include, why I want to include them, and what other potential uses I could get out from them. If you like the content, then do the whole YouTubey, likey, subscribey thing, as every YouTuber in the world always says at some point during the video, unless they're more stronger willpowered than I am, or they put a little clicky button up somewhere on the screen. I'm going to stop rambling there, because I think I'm rambling, and I think we're done. Thanks a lot for watching. Cheers, bye.